We work with about 400 facilities across the country, and very little of those use humanizing language. That is definitely an issue that we face like every day.
Your narrative is, on paper, I'm a felon. I'm more than that. I'm a human. I'm your neighbor. I'm a father. I'm a husband. Those names, those labels, that person-first perspective allowed me to win my elected official.
And I know I'll never lose. There's a different side of me, a side that you never knew. Pages are turning throughout this narrative.
And I don't like using those terms because it throws me right back into those spaces. Why are these terms problematic?
The first thing that comes to mind is changing the narrative is like the first place to start. Let's look at the words we're using, the vocabulary, and the philosophies that are described by this language that we use, and how to change that. Profoundly important in terms of creating these bridges.
Anybody that's labeled that is a million more labels than just that one thing that they did in their life that led them into prison.
Even witnessing power of change and transformation in their day-to-day, they still sometimes seem to hold on to that.
I don't think people are being labeled as inmate or offender is truly a representation of their character. I think it matters what we call people all the time and how we address people all the time, no matter where they're located.
We aren't equal to like the worst mistake that we've ever made. Dehumanizing language itself is institutionalized within these bodies. The language kind of part and parcel with the institution itself. It's been really, really difficult in a lot of spaces to break that down.
So oftentimes it takes a lot of conversations, several situations, coming up with a lot of data.
I would say the roots of person-first language actually stem from the uprisings in Attica. Around the 70s, there were certain uprisings that took place in Attica prisons where correctional officers were basically taken hostage by people who were incarcerated. And these individuals who were incarcerated made these demands. And the only reasons we went this radical is because we're not given the proper food, we're not being treated with respect.
The year before George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor were killed, State College Police Department killed the black man who was experiencing a mental health crisis. Everything else that happened in 2020, where my black sons looked at me and said, what are we supposed to do about this?
I'm sitting down with people who were being arrested in their high school. Like people who had to go through metal detectors, who had to deal with K-9 units, students who were taught how to be inmates in high school.
Bringing students who are part of the program to share their stories and do this in waves in order to just get someone to agree to sign a paper to start a new initiative or to allow a certain number of students to be a part of a program.
At first, I don't think it bothered me because I didn't understand why it was important to make the changes.
If I just see you as a felon or a prisoner, I get to dehumanize you. You are below.
And they kind of use language as a means to exclude people from opportunity. Because by calling somebody
A felon,
ex-con,
Inmate,
convict, or
parolee, you automatically label them as being irresponsible. You automatically label them as being rash, as being inconsiderate, as potentially being violent.
The biggest time where I was offended by it or hurt by it was when I heard a person who worked for our program and answered the phone and was talking to one of our students, and she couldn't hear the person because of the connection issues with the phones from the prison, and she yelled, "Are you an inmate?" I was absolutely mortified.
When I hear those terms, I hear cuffs around my wrist. I hear the slamming of cell doors, and I hear that number, 7862656.
as a person with the felony, we have to deal with that for the rest of our lives, whether it's housing, jobs, education, dating somebody new.
Sometimes when people find out what I do, they're like, "You give inmates education," and I'm like, "No, I provide education for students who are incarcerated."
How could you give somebody a leadership position when you're stereotyping them using these type of labels?
We don't use the word inmate because it's harmful to that population.
When somebody refers to me as a felon or as a criminal,
and takes away their humanity,
it makes it feel like that part of my life is all there is in the entire scope of my life. It puts such emphasis on that one period of my life.
I'm like, how do you feel when somebody calls you a drug addict or something like that? You don't want to be called that, right?
You know, the purpose of the impact of the mission that we're trying to do. One of the first kind of initial challenges is try to explain we instead of us and them.
If we bring the person back to the center, while we still can say the action needs some accountability, but the person is who we need to center.
You understand what the pledge means and how we're supposed to make sure that others understand and we spread the word on using the correct language.
I took the pledge.
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 pledge.